Hey guys, so excuse me, I just woke up, so I'll try to keep this quick, at least quick for me. Um, I I watched The Boys, the new episode of The Boys yesterday, and I believe it was like the 6th episode of the 4th season or whatever it was. It was the one where they invade the meeting with Homelander and Tech Knight and Victoria Newman and all of the rest of the apparently super powerful people that run the country. And the reason that I wanted to make this video is because I think it's pretty necessary, at least for me, because I think The Boys, just as a show, really failed Hughie. Hopefully anyone watching this video has already seen the episode, and therefore is already gonna understand and have a feeling that the way Hughie was treated was not okay. And you'll have to understand, I'm a person that generally believes that nearly anything in fiction can work, that there is no stupid idea in fiction. It's just about how you execute it. I think that your ability to be a good writer is basically what allows you the freedom to tackle multiple different subjects. And I mean to say that because I'm not a person who thinks certain things are off limits, even in comedy, in fictional storytelling, and just in life. I think it's about your ability to be able to relate that to other people in a way that is either funny enough to be permissible, well done enough to be able to give over your intended purpose, or execute it in, I think, such a beautiful and meaningful way that someone recognizes that you're not having a laugh or excitement at their expense, right? I'm not trying to gatekeep anything, and I'm not trying to sound like someone who doesn't understand that shocking things can be in fiction. But what happened to Hughie yesterday in that episode was not just shocking. It was pretty much disgusting. Now, again, if people don't know, the long and short of what I can even get here on YouTube is that Hughie was basically assaulted like for nearly 40 minutes straight. And when I first started watching it, I thought that, wow, okay, we're gonna have some shock value stuff here. But the longer it went on, the longer basically he was subjected to sex acts that he didn't want and that he was terrified of, the more uncomfortable I became. And not in an uncomfortable way of, oh wow, I'm really in the shoes of the character, more like I feel like this isn't being handled correctly. And a huge part of the reason that I made this video is that this second channel, I want to be a space where I can talk about not just writing, but a lot of the factors of life that I think came from me being in psychology and having a master's in psychology and knowing of sociology and being a therapist. And a lot of the issues that I talk about on this channel are human issues, but because my experience here is as a man, I have always wanted to be able to use this platform to talk about things that young men go through and sociological elements that maybe young men aren't naturally equipped to deal with, and psychological elements based upon how we go through life that young men aren't equipped to deal with, and being able to use fiction as a way to also give examples of that. And it's insane to me that in 2024 we can have an entire episode dedicated to the sexual discomfort of a man, and it seemingly be played for laughs by the creators. There is a channel called Pop Culture Detective, which hopefully a bunch of you know, and it has a 2-part video series with millions and millions of well-deserved views, titled The Sexual Assault of Men Played for Laughs. And it goes through and depicts years, if not decades, of sexual violence against men being used as comedy rather than an exploration of the type of sexual violence that men can experience and their reactions towards it. The reason I bring that up is because, again, this is not something new. This concept is very wide and very broad and very well researched. I would have hoped that by this point, with The Boys going forward, they would have understood everything that they would have needed to bring to the table to execute something like this correctly. And my disappointment, I think, stems from the fact that they have done things like this in the past much better. just in the very first season of the show, Starlight was sexually assaulted. In the very first season of the show, Starlight had to go through a terrible, terrible experience of non-consensual sex to be able to join the Seven. And the creators of the show realized that they had to do that correctly, and they had to do that with respect to the character, and they couldn't play that up for laughs because it wasn't a laughing matter. And I think they were correct in that. But what happened to Hughie here, by admission of the creators themselves, was played up for laughs. It wasn't done in any way that I think was supposed to give us an insight into how a person in this situation would genuinely feel. And yes, I understand that there's like a portion of the episode where he like sits on a cake, where he like, you know, does really over the top, insane, cartoonish stuff. But that doesn't change the fact that he's a sex slave, that he's a prisoner, and these things are happening without his consent, and he doesn't know how to get out of it. And the reason that I feel that this is very obvious is because at the end of the episode, they make a point of him having a mental breakdown over not only the anguish of his father passing, which happened in the last few episodes, but of what happened to him in that dungeon. And I think the thing that gets me most of all is that this was indicative of, I think, a weakness of the show. The show, when it wants to shock you, I think in some elements, falls back too heavily on just gore and sexual discomfort. There are plenty of times when I think those elements are used well. There is almost like a culture within the show that this is who it is, and it's going to be irreverent and it's going to be over the top. But this episode specifically felt like we need a character to struggle, and we need the audience to feel uncomfortable. And therefore, we're going to use sex to do it. But not only are we going to use sex to do it, we want the audience to feel shocked. And therefore, we're going to put this character in a position of just being kind of like a patsy for 40 minutes. Because we don't want to come up with another plot device to be able to move this forward, right? Like if you go back and watch that episode, it seemed like there were tons of other ways that this type of like infiltration, almost like heist mission could have gone down. And at the first chance, they jumped at the ability, or I should say the opportunity, to turn Hughie into a sex slave. If the tables were turned, and I hate using this argument because most of the time it's not really true, but if the tables were turned, and if this were a woman in this position, I think it would be much more evident and clear why this situation was so bad. Eric Kripke, I'm pretty sure, has just been on record as saying he didn't see the situation as sexual assault or any type of sexual violence. He saw the situation as being funny and played for laughs. And that's sad. Men and women, I don't think, have a fundamental difference between how they can react to horrible trauma. We literally just got an entire section of an episode dedicated to Starlight's trauma over an abortion, over Hughie's trauma, over his mother leaving and his father dying. And to immediately follow that up with a supposedly comedic sequence dedicated to being able to laugh at a man's pain and discomfort while being used as a sex slave is one of the most disappointing things I've seen possibly in like a long time. This is also just to mention that the episode in and of itself seemed incredibly lazy. There's a point in the episode where Homelander sees a bullet hole in Sage's head and he just kind of accepts it and doesn't investigate, which is insane because she's kind of like the linchpin to a plan that he has, and she needs to give this huge presentation to basically like the oligarchs of America, and she's not able to do it, and Homelander just goes okay, and then it just like skips to the next scene.
Fuck it. I'll do it myself.
This episode, I don't know if there was something going on behind the scenes, but this is, I think, fair to say, the worst episode of The Boys I think I've ever seen. There might have been worse ones, but I can't remember them. This was incredibly bad. Hughie's character deserved better. after coming off of what I think was a fantastic performance and honestly a pretty emotional sequence regarding his dad in the hospital, to have to be subjected to that, to have so many hoops jump through again for what it seemed like a desire to have him in a sexually compromised situation for the entire episode seemed very pathetic on the side of the writers. And I don't know what inspired them to do it. I think there could have possibly been an opportunity to portray this type of circumstance as a genuine exploration of what this would mean for a character. But all in all, I don't even think this episode needed anything close to the sexual violence that was depicted. I think we could have went this entire episode based in politics, in subterfuge, in action, in wits, without having to go to the lowest common denominator of just making things gross. And I know we've had hero-gasm in the past. We've literally had like an 8-foot long penis choke a guy out. And I'm not saying those things aren't like kind of like over the top and insane too, but having a monstrous worm-like dick choke a dude is nearly objectively funny, because it cannot happen to you. It is so over the top that it is almost non-analogous to an actual situation of violence that you could experience in a sexual encounter. But what happened to Hughie, where he was chained to a table and he just had to endure being molested basically, and then tortured, and then threatened to have a hole cut into him so it could be used for the pleasure of another character, to really gain nothing, that seemed like not only a bridge too far for the show as far as not utilizing its material correctly, but also seemed to show a complete lack of understanding for the type of experiences that men can have in the real world, that men can be subjected to, that just people in general can be subjected to, as far as sexual experiences that they don't want or that they've already experienced and have trauma with, right? I think I'm very sensitive to this particular type of thing only because, again, a therapist, I worked with clients who experience sexual violence. It is 100% okay to depict these sort of things in fiction, because I think storytelling is a way to be able to go through your trauma in a controlled experience by seeing someone else gain the ability to deal with it and give you examples about how you might take those own things in your own life and move forward with it, and getting role models for those who've experienced the same trauma that you have, and seeing them become successful, and knowing yourself that you could do it too. But none of that was available here. In all the ways that you could have done this successfully, none of them were executed well within this plot line for Hughie. And I wanted to be able to make this video, even though I will continue probably making videos for the boys in the future. And I've made a couple on the main channel already. I wanted for people who cared enough to be able to have my opinion on this, since again, I have made content for it in the past, and for young men who were feeling some type of way but maybe weren't able to visualize it, or describe it, I should say. This is what this is for, because that was just bad. there was nearly nothing redeeming about it, and I hope they do better in the future. So anyway, thanks for watching all the way to the end. I will not be around for like the next week. I'm traveling, but I'll see you guys in a few weeks. No stream, unfortunately, but if you like what you heard, like, comment, subscribe, do all the good stuff that YouTube wants you to do, and I will talk to y'all later. Thanks. Bye-bye.